Hey folks, we are back live on the Dev Twitch stream. My name is Nick Taylor, and why did this not switch? Okay, I gotta reconfigure my stream deck. Like I said, we're back on the Dev Twitch stream. Uh, I'm Nick Taylor. I'm the lead software engineer at Forum. Forum is the software that powers Dev.
Do you feel like you need to do it again, or are you good, Nick?
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Okay.
I don't know what's up with the stream deck. It's not this. I don't know what's going on, but anyways,
You all know
we are
us,
all good.
folks. There's no way we would have a stream unless something was going wrong at some point. So that is the start of this, and that's okay. I'm Christina Gorton. I am the developer advocate at Forum, and today we have our guest, Jonathan Creamer, who is a senior software engineer at Microsoft. Jonathan, tell us about yourself.
Hey, super great to be here. Really excited to join y'all. So yeah, as she said, I just joined Microsoft in February.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yes, it's always kind of been a lifelong dream. I started writing code when I was about 13, and
Wow.
then when my first gig was doing some cold fusion way back in the day.
Okay.
And yeah,
Old
which
school.
was really fun. Out of college, writing Cold Fusion, and then like a few months after I started doing that professionally, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna switch to .NET." I'm like, "Okay, well
Okay.
that sounds interesting. I don't even know what that means, but I'll try it." I stuck around, and then back at that time, it was like a lot of the Microsoft people that are still here today, like Scott Hanselman, particularly. He was just, this was like before Microsoft had done its revolution for open source and everything. I was learning .NET MVC 3, which was for the .NET fans in the world, the first one that was like really good, and kind of allowed more of a front end focus to be built with .NET Stack stuff, because it was basically building APIs, with .NET MVC. And so then Hanselman and the guys were just sharing all this knowledge at that point, and this was in like 2011, 2012, and I just thought that
Yeah.
was so cool. Like, I got on Twitter and just everybody was just like talking about what they knew, and I learned so much just for free. Like, I don't even have to, like, just kind of blew my mind as this new college kid, because like in college they didn't like tell you about Twitter and the community around
Yeah.
software engineering, and so yeah, so kind of ever since I got to know Scott and those guys back in the day, it's been sort of a life dream to work here, and I'm here, and it's weird, and I love it.
Nice.
Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah, I've never met Scott. He's been
It's great.
he always does keynotes at Codeland, which is what we run. Conference
Reaching out
every
soon
year.
to Scott if you happen to be
Yeah,
watching
Yeah,
yeah.
this,
I
because we
can.
want
Yeah,
you
you guys
on.
want me to? You want me to? Maybe he could join. I'll see what
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
doing.
We'll open up the Scott phone. Hey, Scott.
Yeah,
Um,
I've got fun on.
but yeah, I remember Scott as well because
Great.
like we were talking briefly before the stream. Most of my career's been in the .NET space or like Microsoft ecosystem, and I remember just my entire career. Scott Hanselman, then there was like Scott
Oh yeah,
Guthrie, the
Goo and yeah,
Fritz
Bill Hack.
Onion, I think, and all
Yep,
those.
all
And
the guys. John Galloway. He's still
yeah,
there working for Microsoft out of San Diego. John Papa now works at Microsoft too. He was a guy that I leaned on a lot.
yeah,
He was at Disney before, and he's a Azure
yeah,
DevRel. So
yeah.
it's a
No,
good
that's
John
place.
cool.
Papa just got me into drawing more. That's my interaction with him on Twitter. He was drawing at some point, and I started drawing,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
were sharing drawings, and that was
Yeah,
yeah.
you need to
He's a
follow.
really good artist.
You need to follow
yeah.
David Neal too. Then also, David Neal is a really
Oh
good
yeah, I just call him Mr.
marketing.
Bacon. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
Mr.
one.
Bacon. That's probably
Yeah,
bacon and beards and drawings and all the things.
Ah,
Yeah.
yes, I met him once at
Oh,
a
yeah.
he's
conference.
an amazing man as well. He and I started in the same Nash.net user group in Nashville, and so
Okay.
I heard his first talk. He heard my first talk. So we've been together. We've known each other for a while too.
Yeah, the
Wow, that's
way I
cool.
met him was he was just on his iPad drawing while everyone else was talking at a conference, and I just
Yeah,
like walked over and was like, "What are you drawing?"
yeah.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
takes notes. He does the digital notes stuff, on iPad,
yeah.
and so he does some cool drawings like that.
I'm always impressed with. I mean, I take notes, but I have the handwriting of somebody that looks like they're driving on a bumpy road and like even though I'm an adult, I feel like I have kid handwriting still. And because we type all the time now, it's like I rarely use cursive now. So when I go to write, it
I know.
feels kind of clunky.
It feels really weird. I know. I totally
Yeah.
agree.
But when you see those notes, like you're saying, like David or I think her name's Natisha. I can't remember. I forget her name. She works at Microsoft as well. She takes really great notes too. Like she does it on the iPad as well, and she's posted a bunch on Dev2 before as well. And there's
Mhm.
just some Lynn Clark, who used to be at
Oh
Mozilla.
yeah.
I think I forget where she
Yeah.
works
Yeah. Yeah.
now.
I've met her before as well.
Yeah, I've never met any of these people, but you see their drawings and just amazing. Same thing with
Yeah, and on the iPad, it's even harder. Like, I recently got one and started drawing on it, but writing on an iPad, like, I have decent handwriting. I just like
Sorry.
you have to relearn how to write well on an
yeah.
iPad.
Totally
Uh,
agree.
Cool. So we're not here to talk about calligraphy courses today,
No, we're
but
not.
we
we
should.
could go on that. We could do that. We could hit up do some penmanship. But we can definitely talk about that more. But I think we want to dig into some of the stuff that we wanted to talk about today. We're going to be talking about kind of all things front end in terms of just tooling, and like we'll get into what DevOps is at some point.
Oh
But for
yeah.
folks that are tuning in, Jonathan is the one that coined that term, as far as we know, and I believe he was also the first one to tweet it out. So there you
I
go.
get.
There's that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
can talk about that in a minute. Sure.
Yeah. So uh, we'll tie into what we're going to talk about a bit with what you're doing at Microsoft now. So you're primarily front end focused, working on tooling for I can't remember, but is it for like the Office team or one of the
Yes.
teams at Office? Okay.
Yes, exactly. So my team is we're called One.js. There was this initiative inside of Microsoft called One.es, which is a one engineering system thing, and then out of that
Okay.
spawned the One.js initiative. And basically, what happened was some folks out of our Norway office, particularly, were realizing how crazy JavaScript has gotten inside Microsoft. You can imagine it's a huge company. People are doing
Yeah.
JavaScript all over the place, and lots of different. Hundreds of different front end repositories, dozens of teams doing all kinds of crazy different things all over the place. And
Yeah.
so Alex Pope is this guy. He realized that was going on, and he's kind of got all these people together, and he's like, we gotta standardize on some stuff here. This is crazy. There's like
Yeah.
9 different versions of React on the web page because no one's doing these things right. And so that organization particularly works a lot on different components that fit across the ecosystem. Like the people from
Okay.
Norway work on like the search bar or the avatar, those different things. And those little components are like a thing that is in this box, and that box needs to come over here, and there needs to be data, and put this thing over here. And
Okay.
so they were like, let's just get everyone in the same place. Let's standardize. Let's create some good engineering system practices and get us in a monorepo so that we
Okay.
can share code. And Office actually historically is one of the biggest monorepos in the world as well. Like the legacy, not the legacy. That's not the right word. The desktop applications, the client desktop applications.
Yeah.
That code has been in a monorepo for years, and so there's a huge, massive team that just does the like native side. And then now it's like my team was spun up to help fix the engineering systems for JavaScript engineers,
Okay.
basically. Particularly with a focus on Office right now, because that's like where we're at, but we're hoping to spread it Microsoft wide, or at least engineering or experiences and devices, which is like Windows,
Yeah.
Office, Xbox, all that stuff, and just
Yeah.
build good practices.
Yeah, and I know from stuff I've been reading over the past year, like Microsoft also is heavily invested into the React ecosystem. Like I know you can build
Very.
native apps now using React. It's not React Native. I forget is it called React Desktop, or is it React Native? I can't remember.
We're doing a lot of React Native for
Okay.
sure. So I know that for sure, and then I know Teams is doing a lot of React stuff for the new versions of Teams and all that. I think there were some tweets that came out about that recently about what they're doing there.
Okay.
And particularly in our One.js space, I see a lot of React Native. It's a
Okay.
pretty heavily used piece. So yeah, I don't think that's any secret there. That's really well highly used.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So, Yeah, so you mentioned the monorepo, and this is a good segue to kind of start talking a bit about some of the topics. I'm not as good as
Yeah.
Scott Tolinsky at doing segues, but um, yeah, yeah. So one of the topics we want to talk about is workspaces, and um, we have folks on the stream that check it out that have all varying levels of experience. So before we get into that, like kind of maybe explain what a monorepo is and also
Sure.
what workspaces are in, say, the context of npm or yarn.
Yeah. So, a monorepo is exactly what it sounds like. It is one ginormous repo instead of having lots of different repositories spread all over your, GitHub or whatever. You just put all the code in one place.
Yeah,
But in some ways, it's easier to talk about what a monorepo is not, because I think people get and I've talked about this a lot on my blog and different places. It's like there's this term monolith, and
yeah,
that is a
Mhm.
term that is a very scary term to most engineers,
yeah,
rightfully so. And I think like a lot of startups, even when I was during my time at Eventbrite, like a huge majority of my time was spent breaking up a monolith into smaller pieces. And so I think there's a tendency for the community and people to sort of balk at the term monorepo because it sounds a lot like the word monolith.
yeah,
Mhm.
But
yeah,
that's not supposed to be the case. The monorepo is not, just because it's in the same code base doesn't mean it like you're shipping one product with all the things in it at the same time.
yeah,
So
Okay.
it's a good caveat to like say that at the forefront. That doesn't mean that like a monorepo is like the easiest thing in the world to maintain. There's still a lot of complexity, especially
yeah,
when you're dealing, our just like the JavaScript monorepo I'm working in, the JavaScript side of it's like got close to 1,000 packages and about 2.5 or 3 million lines of TypeScript. Like it's a lot of code, a
Mm.
lot of commits. It
yeah.
balloons in size real quick. And that's not even Office. That's just the JavaScript side. Office is like billions of lines of code and, you
Okay.
know, many, many hours of builds and crazy things. And literally like probably 5 different teams working on supporting that one monorepo. But there's also thousands of engineers in there.
Yeah,
And because it's in a monorepo, they're really able to share code very easily between the different products in a way that is just not impossible in a multi-repo setup. It's just not as easy.
Mhm.
yeah,
Like particularly in a JavaScript monorepo, why I love it so much in my experience is like if I want to change the button component, like that's just like my
yeah,
favorite example. Everybody needs a
Mhm.
button. If I
yeah,
want to change the button, I can go make a change to the button and then run my tests and immediately see the button propagate through to every other component that uses it across my ecosystem.
Mhm.
yeah,
Which is not like that's impossible in a multi setup. It's just way more complicated. You get into like,
yeah,
npm linking and doing all these things, and whereas you can build CI systems when in a monorepo where I change the button and then you run CI against all the apps that consume it and generate screenshots and do all these things because you can see that the term like
yeah,
uses the blast radius of your change. Like what is the downstream effects of me making this like update to this button component.
yeah,
And monorepos allow you to do that. It's just putting all the code, and you can check in a change to the button, and you can make fixes to the button to the way that it's consumed. Like if you break something in a component, you can check in not only the update, the breaking change, but you can also check
yeah.
in the updates to that thing in the
Mhm.
same commit,
Okay,
and
yeah.
so you can
Instead
kind of
of
reasonably see everything happening and like why and then in Git history wise you can see it all in one place, and that's really nice and
oh
I
yeah.
think like yeah that's kind
Can I
of the I
stop you
think
there for 1 sec?
go ahead. Yep.
You mentioned something that I think that's pretty important because you fix like you'll modify the button, and then you'll update it elsewhere in the mono repo. It's kind of nice that that one commit contains all that, because normally it would be like,
Exactly.
hey, we've published a new
Yeah.
component library version. Download it now. Go
Yep.
fix your things, and then this it's kind of all centralized, like what was done. So
Exactly.
that's just kind of, it's not something I had considered, but that's a
It's
interesting
really
side effect of a
handy.
mono repo.
I've talked to like a lot of different. I mean, we'll get into other trade-offs, but some folks I talked with at Lyft were talking about how they have their own component systems, and I've seen this dozens of times too, where it's like especially at a big company where you have all these teams flying around doing things and you don't know where your stuff's being used. If you are a team like my
Yeah.
team or like any infrastructure team or a component systems team, it's not like very fun to like update something and then just have to go track people down that are using your
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
and bump the thing for them, or like, you find out that your thing that you did broke their thing and you didn't even know it. And it's just like if it's one is in one
Yeah.
place, you can just literally see the change explode across the repo in like 2 seconds and see how it
Yeah.
affects.
This is making me have like a aha moment on something, because I caught up with an acquaintance yesterday who recently joined SourceGraph, and
Mhm.
she was trying to explain SourceGraph to me, and I was like, okay, I can kind of see that. Having companies that have like a monorepo, SourceGraph now makes a lot more sense to me. Lyft apparently is one of them that uses it, but it's
Yeah.
so that you can like easily find code, quickly. They have like
Okay.
a way to search for code quickly. SourceGraph is what it is.
I've
And
heard of that.
you like anything you like change or whatever, you can find all throughout. It's like a way to find anything in either multiple repositories, or if you have like a big like repository like that, and one change
Okay.
can happen like everywhere. So to me, I'm having this moment of like, oh, now I understand what she's talking about. I did not yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I haven't I think I might have worked in one monorepo at one point and it was just contributing to a project, but I haven't professionally. I know there was one place I was working at a fintech company. We were using, I think, npm shrink wrap at the time in the mono repo, and it was causing all kinds of weirdness, but which I think I blocked out of my head. But yeah, so we got the mono repo here, and so like we need tools to manage this mono repo. So it's not
Yeah.
just like a happy path of like
No.
all the codes here and go. So how does that kind of break down for folks that might not be familiar with like workspaces and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of a monorepo extends much farther than, like, I think Google first posted about a long time ago. Google's one of the most famous monorepos. Like basically all their code is in a
Yeah.
monorepo. And then Facebook is not just one monorepo. I think there's like a few, so it's
Okay.
not like everything is in it from what I understand. I think there's a couple different ones, but they're all still really big, really, really big code bases. So the idea of the monorepo kind of goes further, but there were some really popular monorepo tooling libraries that got written. Lerna, obviously, probably
Hmm.
being the one that most people are familiar with. I think Lerna really took the front end monorepo into like the public, right? I mean, like that was the first one that I think everybody has seen or
Yeah.
heard of, at least Lerna. And so Lerna did a lot of things. Lerna was the first kind of good front end based monorepo tooling where it was like, cool, I can see like, I'm in Babel, I think is still using it. I've got like 50 packages in here, and
Yeah.
that are all Babel's a thing, and you can see how they all link together. And then there's tooling around running the tasks, your npm tasks, your tests, your linting, running them in a sane order. I
Hmm.
think that's some of the most important aspects of what a good monorepo tooling does for you is that task running, particularly. So that way,
Yeah.
you can do like npm run or whatever, you learn to run this, and it goes through and it generates like a graph of everything it needs to build, and does all the builds and everything in order, and tests everything, and does your publishing to npm or git, does
Okay.
tagging. So those are like the general things that you want any good monorepo tool to do. And Lerna was the first one that sort of made that popular, and then other things kind of sprouted up after it.
Yeah, because
Um,
from what I remember, I think it was Sebastian McKenzie and
yeah,
Jamie
Jamie.
Kyle that
Yeah,
created it, and
yeah.
then they all. I know Sebastian McKenzie created Yarn, or was it with Jamie Kyle? I can't remember.
Also,
Uh,
yeah, they
yeah,
worked together
and
on
they're
Yarn at
obviously working together now on Rome, which is
on
another tool.
Chrome.
Which
Yeah, I got to
but
work with Jamie for a little while too, because he worked at Eventbrite with me for a year.
oh, no way,
Uh,
that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, he was with us for a little bit too, so I got to work with them a little bit also. So a lot of my knowledge comes from kind of working alongside him, and which was an amazing year experience.
And
Him and Sebastian are so smart.
in terms of history, did Lerna come before Yarn Workspaces? I feel like it did, but I don't remember.
I don't remember either, but I'm pretty sure it did. I think like,
Okay.
once Lerna was so popular, there's another one that I'm blanking on that at the time was like a competitor to Lerna, but then Yarn Workspaces came out not long after it, and it did similar things, but less. It did
Okay.
enough. It did enough to where like if you were already using Yarn and you didn't want to figure out Lerna, you could just like throw a workspaces thing in there and it would sort of work, but it was
Okay.
never like fully fleshed out. And I actually think Kyle Welch, who we were talking about earlier, actually added
Yeah.
some goodness into Yarn Workspaces to make it do workspaces run all or something. I don't remember what it was,
Oh,
but
nice.
and so, but yeah, the concept of it's a really weird name, workspaces, because you have a packages folder that your workspaces live in. But I kind of tend to think of both in Learn and in Yarn and Npm that a workspace is just like it's just a package. So
Mhm.
it's like it makes sense that we call them workspaces, kind of, I guess, but basically it's just your packages in your packages folder. Each package in there is a
Yeah.
workspace,
And
and then you use your task runner to run your npm verbs, as we call them,
yeah.
your start, your build, your test, your lint.
Okay, your npm scripts, yeah. So and just to break down, like for folks, because I know at least in some communities there's folks that are new in front end. So like, they're learning JavaScript and HTML and CSS, but they're like the whole build tooling and stuff. That's like not foreign, but it's another thing that
Why? Yeah.
will come on their radar at some point. But so like just to break down, like you're talking about packages. So like a workspace would be the project that generates a package, right?
Um,
Or not
yeah,
necessarily.
kind of. So most, especially
Teach
in the
us what
context,
it is.
you got a project. Is that what you said?
Like I mean, yeah, because when I mean project, it's like if we're outside the monorepo, you have a project, and if it's a front end package so if it's a front end project that you want to publish to npm, the package is kind of like the build artifact of the
Yeah,
project.
that's probably a good way. I think of projects at like a higher level than that, but I mean, yeah,
Okay.
you know, when you put it in when you put the context of like a learner repository or a Yarn workspace repository, maybe repository and project are sort of similar words. Like that's your
Yeah,
project.
repository probably makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, but that's so putting in the right terms. Yeah, repository project, and then inside of that is like each workspace or package. Each is kind of the artifact that gets delivered
Okay.
downstream or upstream to npm or to your Git repo or whatever. Azure DevOps. That's what we're using here, obviously.
Yeah.
Um,
So, and at Microsoft, what are you using right now? Are you using npm workspaces or Yarn workspaces or?
So across the organization, there's lots of different ones. Obviously, another really big, fairly big competitor in the space is Rush, which is one of the Microsoft-owned open source tools. That's another monorepo thing. And
Okay.
also, I should double back and say that we talked about Lerna, but there are also other good monorepo tools out there as well. Lerna and Rush and NX is another really big one by the
Okay.
particularly I think that one came out of the Angular community. I think it's like I think it works for everything, but I believe
Okay.
NX was popularized by Angular. I just wanted to make sure that we cover that. And then there's like the simple things like npm and Yarn workspaces. So in terms
Okay.
of what I'm doing right now on my team,
Yeah.
we are standardizing around Yarn workspaces
Okay.
temporarily. It's a really cool thing. So I'll give you some background here. Um, so once Alex and the guys realized we need this big monorepo thing,
Yeah.
they were using Lerna, and then ran into some issues and tried Yarn workspaces and it was fine. And then found some performance bottlenecks in Yarn. And so they're like, okay, we're going to fork Yarn and fix some things and put it back. But then the Yarn v2 came out.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
right after we fixed all these perf issues in Yarn v1, Arcanist is like, oh, we're not actually accepting any more stuff into Yarn v1. So we're like, okay, well, that's
Oh,
interesting.
okay.
So actually, I believe I'm gonna double check before I say this, but Midgard Yarn is public on npm, And Midgard Yarn is a fork of Yarn that we started using, and that's mostly what we're using right now. But it's basically Yarn plus performance enhancements. Like you can go look at the commit history in the repo and see it's mostly just we fix some like network connectivity things, and it's basically Yarn workspaces. But this is where this gets even crazier. We realized that we're going to have, like I said, we already have millions of lines of code, and we're supposed to be onboarding more and more and more and more code. And Yarn, and the current way that it was resolving stuff, we had like this linear growth. It was like the more that we put, the more packages we put in the repo, like the time to install got higher and higher and higher. And it was like, this is not good.
Okay.
Bad thing. Yeah. And so Vincent, who I work with closely out of Norway, he was looking at something called Pnpm, which for the listeners who have never heard of Pnpm solves a lot of interesting node problems. Part of the thing with big code bases is you have, just installing like a few packages, you'll install seemingly millions of node modules. You don't know how many there are. And there's this problem with npm and node where if you require a module, but you forget to put it in your package JSON, it can still find it because it just goes ////, and if somebody else had required that thing, like that's bad. It's called a phantom dependency. And so there's lots of these things to worry about. And so we decided to take some of the ideas of Pnpm and sprinkle in this Midgard Yarn thing. And so now we have this kind of really interesting world where we've been able to bend our linear growth into this what we call sublinear scaling. So we're not like you can add dozens and dozens of packages, but because of the mechanisms of Pnpm, which is like you do a lot of disk symlinking and deduplicating and all this kind of stuff. I know this is all like really complicated sounding, but it's coming to a point that it's going to be even really, really cool. We did all this work for like a year and a half, and then Vincent worked on an npm RFC to take some of the work that we have done inside Microsoft and actually contribute it into npm. That's where I'm getting with this. This is what's awesome. Is in the last few weeks, I was actually on with Vincent the npm RFC weekly meeting that happens every Wednesday. We were able to go on there, and Vincent had written this really nice long RFC for a new installation mode of npm called Isolated. And I'm gonna grab the link.
That's the one I actually caught that YouTube one. That's the one I saw.
Yeah, there you go. So
discussion about backwards compatibility and.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And so that is where we're at right now. We are using this like Midgard Yarn and this like new strict mode thing that we have some code internally we've written, but that code is being, or at least the ideas of that are driving this to where we're gonna take that logic and put it into npm natively and get off of any of our forks and our Yarn, Midgard Yarn-y things and all this stuff. We want this to go out of Microsoft back into the community where it belongs, and let these big monorepos like ours not get like long Yarn install times like they do today. In our initial, testing here, we're taking 15-minute Yarn installs down to like 5, and we're talking,
which is huge.
Huge, yeah, especially in a CI environment where you're trying to get code out as quickly as possible. So myself, I'm working on the internal side, making our current stuff work with it, and then he's going to be working with Isaac over there at npm and making npm work with the symlinking. I can get more into like the nitty gritty of all the phantom dependencies and doppelgangers and all these different things that we're solving that cause the performance to be better, but it's like really, it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, no, and I know you said it, but I just want to repeat it. It's pretty cool that you've done all this work and it's gonna go back into npm natively instead of just kind of guarding it in your own code base. It's probably better for Microsoft long term, anyways, because if it's you're no longer maintaining something, you're contributing to existing tooling. So open source strengths again.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's the really exciting part. And that's like part of what got me so excited to come work at Microsoft is that we're so willing to do that. And I think some people miss that about our culture, but our culture is real big and on trying to take that stuff out and share it. Now, it used to be the case, but for sure now, like I wouldn't have joined Microsoft myself had I not seen that, because I love getting to open source and things like Hacktoberfest and all these fun things. Like that's like what I live for. I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I won't lie, we're big fans of open source too.
You should be. So that's kind of where we're at. Yeah, we're using basically Yarn workspaces, but with this like cool performance boosting stuff that we're going to be sharing with the community. That's the TLDR of where we're at.
Okay. And I know it's getting technical, but I'm kind of curious about the phantom things. The symlinking I get, because 20 projects use the same package, just point to the same physical one. That I get, and I can see the performance boost because you're not installing stuff, extra stuff again. But the phantom, I didn't quite catch why that's happening.
So it's a really,
don't worry about kids or anything in the background. It's okay.
My wife and I just got back from the
no, don't sweat it. It's
all the time.
Christina's kids are always trying to break into her office.
I figured I wouldn't even mind if she to come in. I just didn't want to. The dog is really the big problem. She barks really loud every time something's in the house. Basically what happens is, and I've seen it a lot, where and actually, there's you heard about it in the Npm RFC meeting. Sometimes we as authors of libraries will npm install some package, and then in our code we'll require a module. Let's just say like Redux or something. I don't know. But maybe one of the npm packages that you installed actually had Redux as a dependency also. And let's just say that I actually didn't put Redux in my package JSON. I forgot. It's just literally not in there. That's a phantom dependency, because what happens is npm will resolve Redux to your local node modules directory. Because somebody else depended on it, but my code didn't. And that's a phantom dependency. And that's bad, because as the owner of my package, I might actually be needing like Redux 5 or something, but maybe this other package depended on Redux 4. Webpack is a really good example of like if you're using Webpack and you like a lot of things are still basically only working 4 versus 5, so you can accidentally, and it's because of how Node works. Node, the way it works is when you require something, it looks like it // is it there? No. Okay, then it goes .. node modules. Is it there? No. Is it .. node modules? Oh, there it is. It just keeps going up the chain. And so what Pnpm does, and what we're doing with our Midgard Yarn strict thing, is at the root of your project, we don't have a node modules directory there at all. There's no fallbacking. There's the phantom problem can't happen. We actually create another folder in your project called .store. And we put we download tens of thousands of node modules into that .store folder. That breaks the node .. require problem, because now like you can't accidentally use a version of something that you didn't put in your package JSON. And then we go through and we symlink from everything in the store to the node modules directories in the project, and that's a not very expensive operation. We actually do some nodes process spawning, just go. And the most expensive thing is downloading all that off disk or off of Yarn. So, for example, we have, I think it's 7,000, basically, 7,000 unique dependencies in our Monorepo that are like packages that we depend on. And to install all of those from scratch with no cache takes about 4 minutes. And that's really fast. And with cache, if like you've already downloaded them before to your Yarn cache folder, it actually only it takes less than a minute from scratch to like just put everything in there. And it's tremendous. It's a tremendous boost in speed.
And I guess sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying there's still optimizations I think we can make.
I guess having having that single store where all the node modules are flat, right? So like it's
Yeah.
not like okay. So not only like in terms of like when you're installing stuff and nodes trying to find a package by crawling the directories, that's obviously completely eliminated, which also speeds up installation time because you're not searching for things. You just because of the symlink, it's just like it's either there or it's not. And
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
And I guess a cool thing about this too is because I remember, I mean, I don't fly a lot, but like working offline, like I imagine if you have this store and you pull it down, you can still be pretty
Yeah.
productive even without an internet connection.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting is it actually the first step, at least in the way we're doing it right now. I don't know how it's going to work in NPM. I assume it'll be similar. The way Midgard Yarn Strict is working right now is that like it first uses Yarn, the old
Yeah.
Yarn v1, and it downloads everything like it normally would into the Yarn cache directory first. And so everything is
Okay.
just chilling in your Yarn cache dir thing. And then we're able to go in and copy everything over from that Yarn cache into your project. So that's why I say
Okay.
before you get on your flight, if you run a Yarn install once,
Yeah.
then when you're on your flight, you'll still be it'll all be pulling from your local cache, which is really
Okay.
nice.
Cool. Cool. I'm gonna stop you for a sec. Christina dropped the link. Did you want to mention our Hacktoberfest check-in?
Oh, I was just dropping the link since Hacktoberfest got brought up in general. So
Ah, okay. Yeah.
just for
Yeah.
everyone, Hacktoberfest, yay!
Yeah. Yeah, no. Hope everybody's enjoying Hacktoberfest. I know we've had a lot of great contributions to forum, and I know
Hmm.
folks who are contributing to other amazing projects too. So that's cool. Um, I did have a question since you brought up Hacktoberfest, Christina. I'm curious, Jonathan, like Midgard and all that. That's all open source right now. Like that's like if somebody
Yeah.
wanted to like
Uh-huh.
contributed
I'll
to it.
grab the links. I'll grab the links and post those in the Twitch chat as well.
Okay. I don't know if
Uh,
it's me, but I keep hearing Midgard and all I keep thinking is like Thor, installing
Yeah,
npm
yeah, yeah, yeah,
packages.
yeah. So part of the reason is because a lot of this came from our engineering team in Norway, obviously.
Oh,
Ah,
okay. That makes
So
sense.
there's literally a folder in our repo called Midgard, and which is mostly where their code lives. And then Midgard Yarn Strict spun up later, and I'm grabbing
Okay.
the link to that as well.
Yeah.
Midgard Yarn Strict is here. And then Midgard Yarn. And I was also going to grab a couple links that explain this phantom dependencies problem from the Rush team as
Okay.
well. Oh, wow, that did a really weird thing in the link,
it
but
will
okay.
it will still
Oh
go.
yeah.
I don't know why it does this sometimes, but the link will still
It's
go. It's done it to
I've
me.
noticed
Okay,
this
fair
with
enough.
it's with Edge. It adds that tilde text. It's like I think when you paste it into a rich text editor, it just provides more information, like alt
Ah,
text maybe or something. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, and there's the doppelgangers one. So
okay.
that sort of describes some of the problems that we were looking to solve. And like the question becomes like, why didn't you just use Rush? Well, we could have used Rush. There was some other complexities that we wanted to work out. That is why we chose to go the way we chose to go. And we're
Okay.
excited to like. I'm personally excited to sit to help to say that I got to be a part of helping make big monorepos work everywhere. That's
Yeah.
what me about this. It's like I want it to work for my engineering friends here at Microsoft, as well as whoever else wants thing
Yeah.
outside of the company. That's really exciting for me.
Yeah, no, it's super cool that it's going back to the community. I think that's really great. Uh, you know, and it's
As well.
yeah. Um, okay, yeah. So there was something else I wanted to talk about the workspaces. So um yeah, oh yeah, I remember what it was. So like working with a monorepo, like the one or two that I might have worked on in the past, like for contributing to some project,
Uh
it's a
huh.
mono repo, but they're not massive. You know what I mean? It's like maybe two or three projects that generate a project and, run a site maybe in like two NPM packages or something. When you have something at the scale of like a Microsoft or a Google, you know, I imagine disk space is a non-issue because, disks are pretty cheap these days, but like, you know, I don't know. It still feels like that first time you pull down the repo. Do you know? Do you do your onboarding at work? You know, like is it
Yeah, yeah.
gonna go to the gym, gonna grab a nap, and then maybe I'll come back or
It's still not as bad as you would think, and I can talk. There's some really interesting other things here that I'll talk about as well. We're not using this yet inside of 1JS. I'm pulling it up now. Hold on one
okay,
sec. But we will be using it in the near future. So um, obviously, it's GitHub is a Microsoft company now, and
yeah,
so this guy from GitHub, his name is Derek Stoley. He worked really hard on this concept, on this extension to Git called Scalar.
okay,
And what Scalar does inside of it is it uses some new features of Git called sparse checkout and sparse indexes. So
that's
in the
yeah,
Office monorepo in particular, not in 1JS yet, but in our big, huge Office monorepo with the billions of lines of code, we're using Scalar. And what you can do with Scalar is you can Git clone the Office monorepo, a couple hundred megs of stuff.
okay,
And then inside of using this Scalar technology, you can switch branches, and then this tool we have called Scoper will basically figure out what branch you're in and download all on the fly automatically for you.
oh, okay,
And it's an amazing piece of technology. And you can, and Scalar is another open source Microsoft product.
okay,
I just grabbed the link here and pasted it in Twitch. So
yeah. I'm just checking it out.
Scalar is how we're solving that massive Git problem
Okay,
right now. And so we're gonna adopt 1JS wasn't big enough yet to use it, but we're getting to where it's gonna be a thing. So, but if you can imagine a world where like um, if you use something like Scalar, where you get this like sparse checkout thing, the cool thing with all these different workspace tools, Lerna, Yarn, Rush, Npm, the one thing that's really nice about them is they can generate you a dependency graph.
okay,
So I can see just by running a few lines of code in like literally nanoseconds, my button is being used in 50 projects or whatever.
okay,
This component is being used in these different ways. Um, that's like fundamental to how these monorepos work, especially with Node. And like you don't want to rebuild everything all the time. You want to know like if I only change the button, I only need to change these like 50 packages. If you combine that with a technology like Scalar, you can literally like Git checkout your dependency
yeah.
tree, which is
Oh, okay, I
really
gotcha.
awesome. Like, yeah, if I don't want to see, 4,000 folders in this one thing, I can just figure out what my dependency tree is and then only like Git sparse checkout that set of dependencies that I need.
Okay, gotcha,
And
gotcha.
so it sort of hides away the fact that you're a part of a system that has millions of billions of lines of code because you've got this like cool thing, Scalar. And Scalar is another example of Microsoft taking internal things and open sourcing them.
Okay,
Derek is working on putting that. It's in our Microsoft Git fork
yeah,
for sure. Now that's what they just wrapped up, and I think like Microsoft Git is trying to upstream stuff back into native Git as well.
okay,
I'm a little fuzzier on some of the details there, but basically, it's another like we're trying to take a lot of this and put it back out there as well.
okay, cool, cool. And yeah, so just to make sure I'm understanding it correctly, so when we're talking about a sparse checkout, like you said, you can analyze your dependency graph for like a project you're working on, and it'll just pull down those projects once you start to go work on it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but does the sparse checkout also, like only pull down Git history as you need it, or is that
I'm not
separate or
entirely sure how basically I think yeah.
okay,
I'm not I don't there's a whole I'll have to try as we talk at some point. I'll try to find um the blog post. This is actually on the GitHub blog too. I'm looking. I think this might talk a little
okay,
bit about what you're describing. Bring your monorepo down to size with sparse checkout is the article that Derek, I believe, yeah, wrote that talks about it. So
okay,
that'll probably give you some more context. But I believe that's the premise. Is like you don't want to have the entire history of the thing
yeah.
locally if all you care about is a small set of the repo.
Yeah, no, I think that's cool because like if you're on a particular team that works in that monorepo, you might literally never pull down like a ton of
Yeah.
code because you're never going to touch other projects. So
Exactly.
I think that's pretty cool. That was kind of my only one thing I didn't really get about a massive monorepo. So tools like Scalar make a lot of sense. Okay.
Yep. And then this other, I don't know if I'm trying to see if I don't remember if our Scoper tool is open source yet. But Scoper is another thing that we wrote that yeah, I think it's just internal, but essentially it just does Git hooks where every time you change a branch, we have named branches like official something or official that, and if you'll
Okay.
change to a certain branch, and there's like a list of folders that will check out based on that branch name. So if you have like it uses some long running branch stuff, which is brings its own set of complexities, but it's pretty cool. Like if I am a person, like to your point, if I'm a person that only cares 10 folders out of this 4,000 monorepo thing, I can check
Yeah.
out my special branch and then only work on those 10 things. But then when you need this, like, when you are working on a common thing that stretches
Yeah.
across lots of projects, it's nice in the monorepo because you've got that ability to just kind of
To
see
pull
it
it.
happen,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, again, the multi-repo thing.
Cool, cool. Now, I know we've been talking like about really big monorepos.
Mhm.
I want to dial it down now to like,
Sure.
hey, I'm a front end, and I decided that the next thing I'm gonna build, I'd like to use a monorepo. So most likely they won't be using tools like Scalar and all that like anytime
Yeah.
soon. But if I wanted to get started off with, say, you're using Yarn workspaces right now or Npm
Yeah.
workspaces. I imagine the workflow is somewhat similar.
Very similar.
So
Yeah, I would say if I was here's what's interesting. If I was starting a new project from scratch, maybe it's because I know about workspaces, but I think I would still go for npm workspaces.
okay,
npm 7 introduced its own workspaces concept into the mix, and when you look at our happy little JavaScript community, and
yeah,
sometimes I do this. Sometimes I just like open my node modules folder and I just like look at it, and it's like there's so much there. And I tend to, it helps remind me that like the way we architect packages in the front end is like these small, units of code,
yeah,
left pad.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah. That's
small, there's these lots of small things. So even if I'm starting a project from scratch, I tend to try to think of how to write my code in these small units of things. And so I would say, as a front ender on a startup, I might have like, even if you're just doing, even if you have a little monorepo and it's like, here's my front end code, packages slash front end, packages slash back end, packages slash common, like
yeah,
still that gives you this sort of logical place. And then you can further subdivide that down into like, packages slash components or packages slash Redux or something, whatever, however you want to do it. I would say npm workspaces is a really good place to start,
okay,
because it gives you mechanisms for, npm run test, and it'll go into each package in your packages folder and run your unit tests, and you can parallelize them and see them
okay,
run and everything. So I'd say that's a really good one to start with. I mean, or you could just go straight to Lerna. I mean, Lerna is still a really, really great tool. It's a little
yeah,
heavier probably even than npm workspaces, but it's still a really great tool used by, I mean, Babel and everyone's still using Lerna. It's really good also.
yeah,
But I think like it's the mentality that it helps instill that I
okay,
think is just as important as the actual tool. It's
yeah,
it's like sort of takes some of those .NET-y solid programming ideology, where you're talking about like single responsibility and those kinds of things, and helps
hmm,
frame your front end thinking around like what is this one package doing? Like I want this one package to do this one thing, do really good, and that's what like the monorepo structure using Lerna or workspaces sort of helps reinforce, I think, in my mind.
okay, yeah. And it's like at the end of the day, use the tools that work best for you too, but
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
but
I hate like thinking back on how like dogmatic I used to be about certain tools like Backbone. I was like, why would you use anything but Backbone or like whatever back in the day, Require JS, and then like as I've done this longer and longer, I've been like just pick what works and just use it.
Yeah.
It's like, if it works for you, good. Use it and use it well. It's just a tool. It's
Yeah.
just a tool.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Yeah. I always tell that to folks, like regardless of what it is, like just if do what makes you productive and helps you get the job done. So no, that's cool. That's cool, cool, cool. So yeah, so the the workspace enhancements or the enhancements you're doing to npm, do we know when those are going to land, or it's still going through the RFC process, or
The RFC is done. It is
okay,
closed. We are actively working on it with the NPM team right now.
okay,
Vincent, particularly. So he is sort of he's got the repos cloned. He's in there trying to figure out. So there's the NPM. It's a little technical stuff. The NPM resolution algorithm is in a library called Arborist. And so that's
okay,
the thing that like scans your dependencies, figures out what they are, and creates this graph of them. And then it goes into this other thing called reify that actually puts things like kind of on disk. I probably way oversimplified that, but I think that's basically what it is. And so Vincent is
okay,
now trying to implement this like symlinking strategy for isolated mode in the like reify layer of. So if you go look for all those things on the internets, that's what they are. It's like Arborist and Reify, I think, are NPME things that do all that.
okay.
And so
And
I think they're trying end of year, but I don't know. That might be a little quick. But I think that
okay,
was kind of the original goal.
okay,
But we'll see.
gotcha.
We'll keep you
and
posted.
the and the isolated modules will be a flag, I guess, or because it won't
Isolated
be by
mode.
default.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it is going to be some sort of flag. I don't know if he's decided on exactly how it's going to work, but it'll be opt-in. Yeah, it's an opt-in mode
Okay,
for sure that we're gonna put out there.
cool, cool. I gotta say, I definitely learned a few things there. Um, I thought we could touch on something kind of fun what we were talking about at the beginning there, but DevOps.
Yeah,
So people, most people, well, I won't say most people, people are probably familiar with what DevOps is. So where did DevOps come from, and what's it all about?
yeah, man. I love talking about DevOps so much. So I spent it. I didn't go into my career history very deep, but to back up just a sec, I did .NET things and a lot of front end things at Append2, did a lot of jQuery, just JavaScript architecture things, and then at Lonely Planet, when I was starting to build like these really big websites viewed by millions of people, I started to realize how hard it is to actually
Yeah,
build front end websites. We were server side rendering React with Node and like doing Webpack and code splitting and all this crazy stuff. Docker
yeah,
and then like that's just building the dang web build like the code. Then you've got to like take your code and run it through Webpack and put it on a Docker container and put it on Kubernetes and Jenkins and like write Groovy and use Make and all these things that are if you're just a front end developer writing React code, like it's a lot of stuff to like wrap your brain around. But for some
yeah. I
reason,
just want my
uh,
component on the page.
right. That's where I was as a front end guy. I was relying on my DevOps team, the guys doing the CI and all the Docker and all those things. I was relying on them to sort of show me how to do some of that stuff, and they created some good abstractions and how to like just give us this Docker file, and Jenkins will do this. It'll put it on Kubernetes. But then I was like, I want to know more about that. That looks cool. That sounds awesome. So I sort of started straddling that line at Lonely
Mhm.
Planet of like DevOps and front end. And I was doing that for about a year and a half before Kyle at Eventbrite called me up, or actually it was Ben Alegbo do first. Ben
Okay.
and I met at some conferences, and we talked a bunch. And then he eventually was like, "Hey, we actually have a team at Eventbrite that does nothing but front end infrastructure, is what they call it there." And I was like,
Okay.
"Oh, that sounds," because I was kind of doing it on my own at Lonely Planet. I was like, "This is like my thing that I started," and then I
Yeah.
got to join a team of front end infrastructure at Eventbrite. But then as Kyle, who was also on my team, Kyle Welch, and I were talking one day, we are like, front end infrastructure is kind of cool, but like, I don't write a lot of front end code. I kind of do, but I don't. I mean, like I write tools with TypeScript, but I'm not writing front end things. I'm like writing back
Yeah,
ends or
yeah.
Node or Docker or Groovy. And so we reached out to the community, and we had a lot of different, answers. And somebody cheekily said, "Oh, I think you're DevOps." And so I took that, and I was like, "Oh, this is great." And then that's just sort of how it came to be. I started tweeting
Okay.
about it, and Ben's been really active tweeting about it. We got our own little Discord and Slack communities. And yeah, it's basically just, if nothing else, when you hear it, like I was talking before, if you hear the term DevOps, you go, what is that? And it just like causes around like, what do I do? What am I? I don't even know what kind, because there's a lot of engineers that are in the same boat as me. It's like
Yeah.
we are front end engineers, but like I don't even remember the last time I wrote a React component, or anything like CSS. God, if I tried to write CSS now, I don't even know if I could, because
Yeah.
I'm like taking front end code and putting it on the internet somewhere. That's kind of what I'm doing,
Yeah, yeah.
and making both in Microsoft. We have this thing. I like the terms we use. There's an inner loop and an outer loop. Inner loop is like Webpack dev server, and the outer loop is like putting your code on the internet, CI stuff. And so like me as the FE Infra DevOps guy, like I gotta know both sides of that. I gotta know good
Yeah.
web performance and how to bundle things right on the local machine so that
Yeah.
so you can run and see your website in your browser and computer. And then I gotta take that thing up and I gotta either Dockerify, bundle it, or do something in CI and put it on a CDN somewhere. So it's like
Okay.
that discipline, that like front end to distribution level area is where
Okay,
kind of that
gotcha.
DevOps space it lives.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, I dropped a Twitter search to the DevOps hashtag, if folks want to
Yeah,
check that out.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's there's definitely some good stuff going on out there, and it's really fun. I've met a lot of people through it. I've sort of like ever since I started Microsoft, you get busy and you haven't been as active in it, but I need to get back. I want to do like a part of the other reason that I started the thing was because I knew I was doing this and I knew other people were doing it too. There had to be.
Yeah.
Like I'm not the only person doing this, right? Like that was as much
Yeah, yeah.
of I needed some like validation in some of my ideas. Like so there's got to be other people doing this themselves, and so that helped lead me to this community of people that are like, oh yeah, well, that's kind of what I do too. Um, and I want, like Kyle and I have talked about, like a DevOps conference. I don't know, maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll have a DevOps summit, or
Yeah, yeah,
because
do that.
I was just talking with my coworker Benjamin about like I want to know how Google is solving front end monorepo stuff, or like specifically, like I want to go talk to these people, and then I go, oh yeah, I started a community for that. Let's go talk to them and see how they're doing it. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
exactly it. Everyone's solving the same problem in isolation, and that's why I'm trying to take these concepts of strict mode and scalar and put them out into the universe so
Yeah.
people can see what we're doing, we can see what you're doing. Like let's solve these problems together, and then everybody's gonna be better.
Yeah, and also, come around to like common patterns of stuff being done instead of like reinventing these things over and over. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you see the same. I mean, literally, it blows my mind how many libraries I come across. It's like I've seen this solved in like almost the exact same way. It's just
yeah,
slightly different, and like yeah, but it is validating if nothing else. If you make your own thing and then you find out someone else is doing very similar, you're like, all right, that's cool. At least I know
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
on to something. But then
Yeah.
maybe we could
No,
have
for sure.
solved it together and like come up with an even cooler solution because I would have had ideas from someone else. It's like diversity.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel like every place I've worked at, I seem to be the one that always ends up working on the Webpack configuration.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
it's like it's always me, and it's not because I said, "Hey, I want to work on it." It's like like where I was working before, we did we did work for like movie studios and gaming companies, and like the Lucasfilms, the performance of the site loading was like super slow. And then it wasn't a big thing I did, but it had a big impact. Was that, like, I just looked in the Webpack config, and you know how you can generate a hash for, just so when you redeploy, the browser cache keeps it. But this was using the deploy hash instead of the
Ah,
content hash. And so
yeah,
like
yeah,
basically
yeah.
every deploy meant like every package got
Gotcha.
downloaded again. So, it wasn't a
Yeah,
huge change,
man.
but it made like a big impact. And that's the kind of thing like everybody I speak to wherever I work, they're always like they don't want to touch Webpack. And again, it's not because I love Webpack. It's just like I guess I'm doing it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I'm just but I love it, honestly. I love Webpack because it is like this thing where like you can change like one line of code and like have this massive impact on like your web performance or something.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely felt good about that change because like Lucasfilms got back to us and said, "Hey, wow, our internal team tested and it's like 20% faster." So that
Yeah,
definitely
and
made
you
me
go,
feel good for sure.
yeah.
But it's
All you did
like,
is like tweak a few lines of
yeah,
settings. But it's like it's
yeah,
really complicated, man. Like this stuff's not easy. So I'm
yeah,
happy for like more new tools like Vite and Snowpack and SWC and ESBuild. Like I'm
yeah.
happy to see what these things do too. Just to like competition breeds innovation and a lot of that and a lot of those kinds of things, right? So it's like
Oh yeah, for sure. And they've
I'm really
definitely
excited.
learned from the past projects. Like one thing I know that Vite does because I had to put her on the back burner, but I'm looking to move because we're a Rails app, but we use Preact in the front end with some other packages,
Nice.
and the build times they're not atrocious, but like with Vite, when you're doing local development, it actually doesn't bundle. It just uses native ESM
Oh, yes,
imports. So it's like
nice.
literally like the build time is like I don't know,
Nothing.
it's like milliseconds. And then
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
build it for production, I think they're using Parcel under the hood. Not Parcel, roll up JS and then some other
Yeah.
things, but so that takes longer,
Roll
but
up.
it's still faster and then just like even other stuff like I've used Parcel on a few side projects and I think
Parcel's
Parcel
great.
is really nice because you just like you point it to a file and it just knows to pick up TypeScript, bundle stuff,
Yep.
do whatever.
And Parcel 2 just dropped also. I
Oh yeah,
guess you
that's right.
probably saw that, and it's got some Rust in it now. They're doing a lot of Rust things in there to
Yeah,
parse the ASTs and everything, which is even faster, which is awesome. I think a lot of
yeah.
you're probably going to see a lot of tools like Parcel and in Rome. You saw, I don't
Yeah.
maybe also going to Rust
Yeah,
as
they
well.
switch gears just because of the
Yep.
performance, I guess.
Yeah, I even tried to do some of our Midgard yarn strict in Rust, and I did a little, but I was trying to copy files really fast, and like you run into disk problems at that point, which doesn't no
Okay.
matter how fast your CPUs are, you're still IO bound. But yeah, Rust is going to be an interesting revolution in JS tooling as well.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think I haven't used it. It's but SWC is Rust based as far as I know,
yes, it is. It
and that's
is,
from the
and ES
Vercel
build is
folks, right?
Go, I believe. What's that?
The SWC is from the Vercel folks, right? Or is it
Uh,
just open source? Or maybe it's they
I've done
use SWC.
Uh, I think they just bought them or something, or they just, I don't know if
Okay,
they bought them, or but I think they combined or something. It wasn't, and now it is.
okay.
Um, see, I do
Yeah, I
remember
know
that
they
now that you
hired
say
the
that.
Webpack folks too, though. The
Yeah,
creator
well, I
of
mean,
Webpack.
yeah, it was, Webpack was, well, Next was originally
Yeah,
just a big Webpack dev server wrapper that Guillermo wrote and was awesome. And I did see, you're right, I saw something about SWC and Versal recently, but now I don't
yeah.
remember what it was.
It could have been I just read something that they're using it. I just I made the wrong assumption probably that they
No, you're
run the
right.
project.
I saw that too, and now I'm trying to remember what it was. I'll have to
Yeah,
find that. Anyway,
but
I saw
but
something about
yeah,
that recently.
but it's yeah no it's really cool all the tooling that's going on. Like I know I hear people I'm generalizing here, but people grumble like front end got so complicated and
Yeah,
I can agree for sure, but like as somebody who's been in the industry for a long time, it's amazing time to be a web dev,
it really
honestly.
is.
Like
The
so much
only,
stuff like
yeah,
yeah,
so much innovation, so much cool stuff to learn. Yeah, you just gotta like. I think the most important thing to remember is that you don't have to know it all, though. Like
Mm.
some people
Yeah.
get this burnout thing was a thing for a minute, JavaScript fatigue. And I sort of started just taking the approach that like it's cool to know at least what's going on, but you don't have to know everything either.
Yeah.
Just
It's
try to
overwhelming.
know, yeah, try to know people that know things. That's kind of my thing. Is like I don't know everything about everything. I know somebody who knows something about ask about it. That's as important to me as actually
Yeah. Yeah.
knowing the tool itself. I don't know
Yeah.
Rust very good, but I know a guy who knows Rust. I can ask him some questions or SWC or Vite or whatever, any of these tools.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to something you said earlier, which is like um, all these tools, all these opinions. Just do what works for you and your team, and take input where you can, make it good. Define what success looks like for your squad and your team and your place, and just iterate on it and get better and have metrics for you know success.
Yeah.
Get build times under 15 minutes or whatever, and just make that thing awesome, no matter what you use. There's just it's too big of a landscape out there to just always be shifting and doing and trying to be like the cool kids. It's okay to just like have something that works for you and your team and iterate on that thing.
Yeah. Um, I did kind I kind of have like one other question is like, say somebody
Mm-hmm.
wants to get into the DevOps space, you know,
Mhm.
what do you think, because again, things can be overwhelming, like, it's your opinion, I know, but I'm just curious, like, what you would recommend to somebody like, hey, Jonathan, I think this stuff's really cool. Where should I start, or what should I do?
It just so happens that I wrote a blog post about that
Ah,
that I'll
nice.
share
I didn't even know
as
that.
always. Yeah, it's called Getting Started with Front End Architecture and DevOps, ironically enough.
Yay.
So I've got that, and I can kind of talk through a lot of that. I think like um, it's not for everyone, and that's great. There was this cool article. I don't know if I talk about it in this one or not, but there's oh, yeah, I did. Brad Frost wrote this article, and it was like talked about the front of the front end and the back of the front end. And I
Okay.
find generally a lot of the folks that are interested in the DevOps space are the people that like to work on the back of the front end, right? Like more of that
Yeah, yeah.
node and the tooling and all that kind of stuff. If you want to kind of like get started with it, it comes down to just I get a lot of newsletters like Node Weekly is weekly. I read a lot of it's just maybe that's
Yeah.
just me, but I think it really helps because a lot of this is like, you know, true front end stuff, React and Redux and all those things. Those are very, very well documented and solved problems. Component libraries, they're
Yeah.
solved all over the place in hundreds of ways and there's lots of material out there. For this back-endy, front-endy stuff, it's less solved.
Okay.
It's like still constantly evolving, and so it kind of just helps to have a broad swath of knowledge in little tiny areas. Like I think Docker is huge. Containerization is really important.
Okay.
I think knowing things like abstract syntax trees, which is basically how Babel works, how TypeScript works, how CoffeeScript works, how all those tools work.
Copy
Those are
script.
some good
Yeah.
things to know. Webpack, I think, does a lot of AST stuff, roll up. So there's some fundamental pieces of like the tools that they all have in common. ESLint, like
Yeah.
ESLint, Babel, Webpack, rollup, all those things work because of ASTs. Because they read code line by line, they break it down into
Hmm.
tokens, and they say, this thing, I know this thing, this is an if statement. Or this
Yeah.
thing here, this is an import statement. I know what that is. Um, and then once you sort of know how some of that works, you start automating a lot of processes and things. And I think a lot of the DevOps space is in automating, whether it's through CI and running big builds in CI and or automating, adding an import statement to 20,000 lines of code or whatever, different things like that. That comes from learning how to automate things really well.
Yeah.
So definitely check out that article.
Yeah. I dropped a link to astexplorer.net. for
Yeah, I was
folks if
going to
they
do
want
that.
to
I'm
check
glad
that.
you did. Yeah, that thing is
Yeah,
awesome. ASP Explorer is the best because you
yeah,
can literally see how it all breaks down. See what else is. I think like I have found writing down. I put this in the article. Writing things down helps so much, and I don't think
yeah.
people take it for granted. It's like, oh, what do I have to say? Why would I write a blog? Those kind of
Mhm.
things,
Yeah,
or even if it's whatever. But for me personally, especially in this tooling space, where again a lot of this is not necessarily consistently solved,
yeah,
I'll write it down for myself.
Mhm.
I happen to have a blog, but even if you're at a company and you don't, you may think you're like, I'm all on my own. Writing it down, reinforce your ideas, and then if you do
yeah,
happen to have it public, the chances are someone also probably has that same problem. You may
Mhm.
think
yeah,
that's not,
exactly.
but a lot of the times it is. I wrote this like silly little blog post, and it was about testing jest with TypeScript and mocking. And
Okay,
I wrote it actually. I've gotten to where when I have a question from somebody using my tools, I'll instead of just answering the question, I'll write a blog post about it,
Mhm.
then give it to them, and then put it on the internet so they have it, and then everyone else has it. And that
yeah,
one blog post that I thought I was just giving to this one person is I get like 5,000 views a month on this, like how to test with TypeScript mocks. Like
yeah, yeah,
those, just getting those thoughts out of your brain are so important to help you grow and help grow others around you and help spread this idea of like engineers like us to do tooling, because there's a lot of people out there that do it. And then we can find each other and come together and do these
yeah.
things in the open space.
Yeah, I think your advice about writing in general it applies to so many things
It
because
does.
I hear it from and I know you've heard this from people too, Christina, like why should I write this blog post? Like what if somebody else has already wrote a blog post about it or I'm not an expert or whatever, like I don't know. You kind of just have to tear off the band-aid and just do it
Yep.
and
Yeah, you
Yeah.
do.
if people read it, great. If they don't,
If
it's
they
not
don't,
the end
it
of the
doesn't
world. You
matter. It
started
helps
blogging.
you. Yeah,
It helps
exactly.
you later on. Yeah,
It does.
that's
I don't tell you. I can't tell you how many times I've Googled for something and found my own blog post. It's almost
Yep.
embarrassing,
Yeah.
Yep.
but that's the point. Is like you're putting it out there, and
Yeah, you're
then you're
dumping
like,
your brain
oh,
out there.
yeah, you're dumping. I had one of the most uh, had a Babel node problem. I don't know. It was driving me crazy. I ran into it like 2 or 3 times before I wrote it down, and then finally I wrote a blog about it. And then literally like 2 weeks ago, I Googled and I'm like, oh my god, I've already solved this problem. Here it is.
Mhm.
No, it's really good. It's really important. And you're to your point in any discipline.
Yeah.
Um, in any discipline is good, but I especially think in this tooling space where not a lot of stuff is written about this. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of like high level hand wavy like both things or whatever, but
Yeah.
less and less of like implementation specific like stuff exists. So it's important to just share it. People find it. You talk to those people, and then it's about building relationships around it, and then which all comes back on you learning more about the thing you wrote about in the first place.
Yeah. No, for sure. No, that's awesome. Yeah. We're getting close to time there. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to discuss, Jonathan. Uh,
No, I'm. This has been just great. I just yeah, if you're like me and like weird tools and webpack configs, then DevOps is the place to hang and get to know each other. And I just want I've like I said, I've kind of gone a little bit more underground in the last few months, but I'll pop my head up again here soon and start trying to get
Mhm.
even more organization around.
yeah.
I really want to talk to people about how they're solving these exact same problems as me. I don't
Yeah.
want I like
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's hard. Like people inside Microsoft are looking to me for answers on some things, and in some things I
Mhm.
have answers, in other ways I don't. And
Yeah.
even for the answers that I have, I'm like, I think that's the right way I've been doing this, but like, is there another way to do this? Is there another way we
Yeah.
can be running
Yeah. Yeah.
tasks? Is there another way we can be distributing cache builds? Something we didn't talk about, which is kind of fun, I want to nerd on for a minute. We're working on we actually have our own task runner also on top of Yarn Workspaces called Laga. It's just
Okay.
another Norwegian word. I'll share this link as well. This thing is so cool, man. It uses Yarn Workspaces under the hood, and it generates a build graph based on your dependency tree. So it's like, because we use TypeScript, certain packages depend on, the type definitions for another thing. And so this tool is able to go in and figure out like an actual, not just dependency tree, but like a build graph of like these 3 things need to be built, then this one can go because it's got all its dependents built. And it does it all really fast. But the other thing that it does and that we're working even more on is distributed caching of those built artifacts. So maybe you can just, if you have 1,000 packages, just in every PR build, just rebuild all 1,000. But it's only going to actually rebuild the code that's changed, and everything else is just going to pull from a distributed cache.
Okay, gotcha.
And then you could also do the same thing locally. Like if I'm working on, this one app, everything that it depends on can just be pulled down off of the internet to my local machine. And then I don't even have to run like multiple Webpack processes to build like dependent apps. You're just pulling down cache. So these are some of the other problems that like I'm faced with and I'm solving right now that I'm like, I've got to know how other people are. Is this a thing? Like this seems like a pretty cool thing, this distributed caching thing. Who else is doing this? I want to know where else is happening. That's Laga, and then there's also a build Excel thing that Microsoft has. It's pretty cool too. It's built with C# and does a similar thing. Like it does a build graph and pulls caches down. So those are the kind of problems I'm trying to solve. That I'm like, I want to talk to others. Like, let's get together. What's everyone?
You got to do that conference, or do stream about it. Do a YouTube or a Twitch.
Yeah, I do need to get on Twitch myself more. I thought I did it one day, and I need to do it again. Just like, hey, I'm gonna work on this today, and because a lot of, like I said, a lot of this is open source, so it's like cool. Like, you can like talk about it. You still obviously gotta be careful, but it's stuff I can talk about. It's not G14 classified.
Yeah, don't want the G14 coming after you. Cool. Well, listen. Well, it's been awesome. I really appreciate the brain dump. I know I enjoyed all of it. It was super awesome. There's some of these things I definitely want to dig into. But before we go, no, I'm definitely gonna hit you up for sure. If folks want to reach you, where's the best place to find you these days?
I'm basically everywhere. jcreamer898. Twitter.com/jcreamer898. Twitch.tv jcreamer898. I got married on August 9th, 2008. There you go, 898. That's where that comes
from. All right.
And so there you go. GitHub, same deal. I own that, and I also basically own the top 10 of Google and Bing for Jonathan Creamer. So you can find me there. It helps to have a fairly unique name. Not a whole lot of Jonathan Creamer.
Yeah, I lose out to a Canadian pro golfer called Nick Taylor, so I won't be showing up in the top 10 anytime soon, unless I start going pro golf. But
there you go. There is another Jonathan Creamer who actually also does live in Nashville near me. But he's just this he has like a PhD from Vanderbilt or something. So occasionally I'll find him instead of me. But most of the time, I've got Google under control there.
We got the real one here.
Yeah, you got the real one. Join the DevOps. We're sort of like, we were in Slack, and I got annoyed how Slack disappears messages after 10,000, and so I moved over to Discord. But then there's people that still don't like Discord, so it's kind of, we're like in this annoying split phase but Discord is where I prefer to be now. And then, obviously hashtag DevOps on Twitter if you want to talk about it and stuff. But DevOps would be a fun place. Come talk about stuff in there. There you go.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much. Christina, for Hacktoberfest, do we have anything else going on right now? We're doing is there another roundup coming up, or what do we?
We will likely have another roundup of all the wonderful people who have been contributing, because we've had a lot, especially now that we have an initiative for internationalization on
Oh yeah, that's right.
the forum platform. So we've had a lot of wonderful and meaningful PRs put in. So thank you, everyone. I will likely write up another roundup at some point. I think Nick and I will probably get on and shout people out because we did that last year, and we definitely want to do that again because we've had a lot of people. So Nick and I will coordinate that. But other than that, we still have a lot of issues. You can look in our repo for the Hacktoberfest label, or if there's other things labeled bug or ready for dev and don't have Hacktoberfest, you can still contribute to those as well.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, Jonathan, and we'll see you all next week, folks. Later.
Thanks.